How's it going, everybody? Yeah, Trey Hensley here. Obviously, you're on my channel. I am gonna start doing some of these videos every now and then where I just kind of talk about gear and guitar playing and just some stuff that maybe have questions that have been asked on my channel or on Instagram or Facebook or wherever that I haven't gotten around to answer, or just some sort of tips, technique sort of things. And yeah, what better place to start than just talking about the acoustic guitar and bending strings. So I don't know what I'm going to call this series. I'm probably going to do this a lot when I'm on the road. Today I'm home, and just thought I'd kind of do a little quick video and talk about this. One of the questions that I get a lot is that I bend a lot of notes on the acoustic guitar. And so I get a lot of, what type of strings do you use? Are these electric strings? What gauge strings? All that good stuff. How is my action set up? All the typical acoustic guitar questions. And I do want to preface this by saying that I have a more formal instructional course over at bigmusictent.com. And it's, I think the name of it is something about playing fast and clean. But you can go check it out over at bigmusictent.com. And I'm very proud of that course. But what I'm going to do on this YouTube channel when I do these videos is typically just take some questions that I normally get asked, maybe just shoot the breeze about some gear related stuff, all that good nonsense. So thank y'all for watching. I'll start off, this is my kind of first video like this, so I wanted to start it off by playing my favorite guitar that I own. It's a 1954 D28. Obviously you can see it's been pretty road worn. I think I'm the third owner of this guitar. I think it's spent almost its whole life in East Tennessee. The original owner, I sold it to a friend of mine, and then when I was a kid, I had a 1966 Martin D35 that was pretty beat up, and I had to sort of get it reset up by a great Martin luthier in Franklin, Tennessee. And it was a great guitar, but anyway, when I played this one, I fell in love with it. It's a D28, so it's got Brazilian rosewood back and sides. Typical kind of Martin. It's got the sound, I immediately fell in love with this guitar when I played it when I was a kid. And jokingly, I said to the guy that owned it at the time, who was the second owner, if you ever decide to sell this, let me know. I was a kid at the time, but obviously these 50s Martins weren't really as sought after then as they are now. But anyway, not long after that, he ended up selling this guitar, and I sold my 66 D35, which I would still love to have back. It was a cool guitar. It had the big Lester Flat style pickguard on it, and yeah, I loved that guitar, but not as much as I loved this one. However, if you are a friend, know where that 66 D35 is. I'm your guy. But yeah, so my parents helped me out, and I got this guitar. This to me is like a once in a lifetime guitar. It's not, a lot of the guitar players love the 30s and 40s Martins, and I do too, but that's a little out of my price range. It always has been. But this guitar just spoke to me immediately. I don't play it as much now as I used to. It's got a pretty slim nut width. It's a 1 11/16. I've been used to playing 1 3/4 nut widths here recently, and this just cramps my hand up sort of immediately. It does have a pretty skinny neck. You can't really tell it from the video, but it's kind of funny. It's worn down up until about the 5th fret, and then it gets super fat. But it plays great, and I use Diodario strings on all my guitars. I don't have any laying around, but I use nickel bronze. So a lot of people think that they're electric guitar strings because they're all nickel. But they are not. They are acoustic guitar strings, and I use medium gauge. So the bottom string is a 13, and the top string here is a 56. Or bottom, top, whichever way you want to go. Doesn't matter to me. But it's 13 to 56, so 13, 17, 26, 36, 46, 56. So it's pretty heavy gauge of string. I typically have a fairly high action on my guitars. I play pretty hard, so that you kind of need that action and those strings to get that boom out of these guitars a lot of the time. But what I'm going to talk about today is, again, a question that I get asked a bunch is, why do I bend strings on acoustic guitar? How did I work on bending strings on acoustic guitar? When I started playing guitar, I was just so eat up with kind of the Earl Scruggs style of guitar playing, which is the Carter family style of guitar playing. So a lot of, very, very pretty pickings, like the Wildwood Flower. Or songs like You Are My Flower. So a lot of very melodic playing, not a lot of bending in that stuff. However, there was one Earl Scruggs song, and I have some finger picks here. I'll try to play it. I'll probably butcher it, but there's an Earl Scruggs song. I'm assuming it was an Earl song, but it's one that he played a lot called the Georgia Buck that he bent strings on. That was one of my first songs that I learned that had string bending in it. So the song goes... always loved that lick. It's a very short bend, but it's still bend. But Earl would bend that first string and hold the F chord. So another question that I get asked a bunch is why I don't use my pinky when I play. And I typically don't use my pinky very often. But kind of a weird fact about me is that I'm double jointed. And my pinky, I have occasionally a lot of pain in my pinky. And it locks up. You can probably see it. It just locks up. So when I play and I'm doing something, especially on the higher frets, when I'm reaching with my pinky and I go to get rid of it off the fretboard, it wants to lock up, and it has forever. And so I typically work around it, and I don't use it that much because it makes me feel panicky when I'm on stage and my finger locks up. And the other three I don't have that much problem with. However, I do use it occasionally, especially on songs like that Georgia Buck. But that was the first song that I really remember working on that bending stuff. After that, Tony Rice is my guy. That was my favorite guitar player and still is. But he would bend, or that was really big on some of his early records where he would do kind of a half note bend. And I think it was probably because he played with really high action in the early days. I think as the years progressed, he had his guitar set up to where the action wasn't quite so high. But he would still do a lot of... There's a really good lick in Me and My Guitar where he does a... It's kind of a, I don't even know what that chord is, but it's a bending thing. But I always loved that. Anyway, long story short, when I was a kid, my favorite place to go to was this record store in East Tennessee called Cat's Music. And I think it was kind of a little chain, but it was just a record store, CD store at the time, obviously. And the guy that worked there was so great. You know, he knew I was into music. And so he would always order a bunch of bluegrass stuff. And so literally every day after school, I would, you know, beg my mom to take me to, you know, Cats to go over there and look at the new CDs that he would get in, you know. And so I got a lot of, you know, Country Gentleman, Charlie Waller, Flatt and Scruggs, Jimmy Martin, Tony Rice, J.D. Crowe, you know, anything you could think of in the bluegrass world. I got it from Cats, you know. And occasionally he would have stuff playing, you know, on the speakers in the store that I had never heard of, you know. And I think I started showing interest in some of it. And, you know, up until a certain point, I was strictly bluegrass. And then I started listening to some country, you know, and got into Merle Haggard. And I'd always liked country, but when I started playing guitar, it was all bluegrass or nothing. And so this guy at Cats was just so great because he would save me just records that he would think that, you know, well, Trey might like this, you know. And he started, at one point he saved back the Robert Plant and Alison Krauss record when it came out. And of course I love Allison, but I'd never heard of Robert Plant. And he could not believe that I'd never heard of Robert Plant. So he gave me a Led Zeppelin record. And that was sort of my first introduction into that world, you know. And it just blew my mind to hear somebody play guitar and be bending all those notes. And from there, I started getting into just other electric guitar players and, you know, Eddie Van Halen. And but one day I came in and I bought this Eric Clapton record called Eric Clapton, Me and Mr. Johnson. So it's all Robert Johnson songs. And I loved it, but I wanted to hear what Robert Johnson sounded like because I'd always heard that name, you know. And I bought a Robert Johnson record and it blew my mind. And I started getting way into blues music. And I got into B.B. King. And so that really led me down the path of bending guitar strings. At that point, I started playing more electric guitar too. And then I kind of put it over into my acoustic playing. But anyway, you know, where before the most bending I would do would be that little half note sort of. You know, that was about the extent of my bending. And then I would listen to B.B., you know. And I learned how to do that on electric guitar, but I really wanted to do it on acoustic guitar. So literally what I did was just sit and practice that. And I would play the notes together, so. Until they matched. And really it's an ear training thing. I mean, I play by ear anyway. And so I would, you know, I've always tried to practice with intent. I'll make notes of what I want to learn, whether it be, you know, songs, licks, a particular solo, and I'll try to work on things throughout the week. That was one of the things I really wanted to work on, was learning how to bend without changing my string gauge, without changing my action setup. And so I would just literally work on that bend, you know. Or, you know, just anything where it was mimicking the note below. And I would work on bending, you know, with other strings. So when I do bend, typically on acoustic guitar, I'm using 2 fingers to bend the note up. So I'm putting most of the pressure on my ring finger for that particular bend, but I'm also helping it with that middle finger. But I also try to work on being able to bend with 1 finger. So being able to bend with my pointer finger, or, you know, just. It's mostly if I'm bending with one finger, it's just my pointer finger. And it was literally just practice. That was the lick that I used a lot. So when I'm talking about, hey, if there's just one small little 5-second thing you can work on, take that and practice it for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, that's what I would do. And that was the lick that I chose. So if you're in a G, you'll just be bending to the notes of this kind of C position or C shape, of the G. So there's your kind of C position. If you imagine having a capo, which I don't have on me, but if you imagine having a capo on the 7th fret and playing C, that would be the G chord shape. So the two licks that I would practice a lot are this just bend from the 8th fret on the 1st string. So getting to this note, getting to the so slow. Another one would be all in that G position. So I tried to work on things mostly in G because, bluegrass guitar player, I play in G a lot. And so I try to work on it there. And then you can transpose it and move it around to different keys, playing an A, move it up 2 frets. I'll play a song and shut up, but I'll do one that would typically use a lot of bending. It's one called Mama Tried. First thing I remember knowing was a lonesome whistle blowing and a youngin's dream of growing up to ride on a freight train leaving town, not knowing where I'm bound. Well, no one can change my mind, but Mama tried. One and only rebel child from a family meek and mild. Well, my mama seemed to know what lay in store. Despite all my Sunday learning, towards the bad I kept on turning till Mama couldn't hold me anymore. And I turned 21 in prison, doing life without parole. No one could steer me right, but Mama tried, Mama tried, Mama tried to raise me better, but her pleading I denied. It leaves only me to blame, cause Mama tried. So talk about that solo for a second. That's one of the only solos that I play, that I try to play it note for note for the guitar player, because that's such an important part of that song. I mean, it wouldn't be Mama Tried without those licks. Listen. To me, that's changing that is like changing the first verse of the song. You can't do that. So I really worked on sitting and learning. And I'll still do that, where I sit and listen to other guitar players, other horn players, piano players, keyboard players, saxophone players, banjo players occasionally, mandolin players, fiddle players, and try to steal licks. But that was one that I spent a lot of time on. The only thing that I'll ever change with it is there's a live version where Roy Nichols plays instead of going, And that's it. That's all I'll ever change with that. But it's, yeah, I've been talking for a long time. So thank y'all so much for watching this video. Let me know in the comments if you have any other questions. I'll try to make the next video shorter. But thanks for watching. And yeah, see y'all again soon.